Alrighty, so here we go, boys and girls. It's that time of the year again, with a couple of days before the new season begin. It's time to make the most controversial video of the year on my channel, and that, of course, is the prediction video. Starting off with the Eastern Conference today, and then tomorrow I'll do the prediction of the Western Conference, and I can't wait to see how bad these prediction is going to be because I remember last year when I made prediction of both the East and Western Conference. Yeah, there were a lot of teams that I got wrong. And as I remind you, it is very hard to make prediction in the beginning of the season because a lot can change when it comes to an entire MLS season. A lot of transfer that could still happen as the season goes along, especially the summer transfer window as well. That could really change the outcome of some of the team. And then let's also not forget about injuries that could be a big impact for each of these teams. But nevertheless, let us begin by starting off with the team that I'm going to predict as the worst team in the league. And this team shouldn't be a big surprise. And I think even TFC fans are not going to be surprised seeing their team being labeled as the team that I predict to finish that last. And also, did I also mention the fact that this is my opinion in terms of the prediction? So if there are some teams that I put relatively low and some teams I put relatively high that you want to talk about, then make sure you leave the comment section below. I'll pretty much mention that once again when this video is done. But yeah, for TFC, obviously, I think a lot of people predict them to finish that last. I believe last year I also predicted them to finish that last as well. And this is just mainly because of the same thing I said about last season. This is year one of the deep rebuild that they're going through. This is clearly the weakest team, I think, in my opinion, out of not just every team in the Eastern Conference, but really in the entire league. As well, and unless if Robin Fraser can do something that John Herman did, which is get the best out of this team and punch above the weight, which is something that Robin Fraser has done during his time with the Colorado Rapids. I don't really see this team do relatively well this season. I think that this team is going to finish 15 and maybe be the candidate of winning the Wooden Spoon this year. Now, going to number 14, let's say DC United. So for DC, obviously last season they barely missed out on the playoffs. If they didn't lose that game against Charlotte, they would have made it into the playoffs. But the reason why I think this team is going to suffer a major setback is that really the reason why last season that DC team got close to making the playoffs is that Christian Benteke single-handedly carried that team. I mean, you can see with him winning the Golden Boot last year, most of the goals that DC scored, and pretty much almost half of the goal that DC scored came from Christian Benteke. Now, I'm not saying that Benteke is not going to be a great player again. I think he's going to be a 10 plus 15 plus goal scorer, maybe even on verge of winning the Golden Boot and defending his Golden Boot crown. But there's no doubt that I think there's going to be some regression, especially some key pieces on the attacking side, especially on the creative department has departed. I mean, they don't have Mateus Click anymore. They also don't have their young talented Ted Kutubietro anymore. And then, of course, we talk about the defense of this team. There's always a question about that, even with the reinforcement that they brought in. I'm not convinced that this DC team is going to get any better. And if anything, last season I think they kind of over achieve a little bit. Partially with the help of Troy Lissing getting that new head coach boost, but they're not going to get that this year. And not to mention what Christian Benteke did last year, just single-handedly dragging that team to the playoffs. That is something we rarely seen happen, and it almost happened to last year if it wasn't for them losing in the final game. And without that, yeah, I think this could be a long season for this DC team. Then we go to number 13. It's going to be the Philadelphia Union. And this is relatively long to write down, so let me just write it down right away. But yeah, the Union, of course, I predicted them to finish 13, mainly because, as I mentioned, this team is going for a transitional period. They pretty much got it the core throughout these last couple of months, and I even mentioned, even though they gutted the core that they had, there are still some key pieces that is there. The front three is still relatively the same as well with Mikael Uru, type Faribo, and Daniel Gasek still being there. Well, I said mostly being there. Ty Baribo really kind of broke through in the middle of last season. Before it was Carranza, Uru, and Gastag, the three-headed monster for this Union team. But besides that, they lost a lot of pieces, and they even lose some pieces that I wasn't expecting to lose. I mean, losing Jack McGlynn, that was a big surprise. I didn't think they were gonna move on from him, and that there's also a sense that they could lose even more piece as we get into the summer transfer window because a lot of these talented player on this team, a lot of talented youngsters like Quinn Sullivan and even Kyle Wagner, they could be so the as soon as the summer transfer window begins. So overall, this team is definitely in a flux right now. It's in a transitional period, and let's also not forget that they for the first time in over a decade has a new head coach in Bradley Carnell. That yeah, he wasn't really a very popular hire when he was first hired, and especially there's a lot of pressure on him. You would think, especially replacing a guy like Jim Curtin that's been there for over a decade. But overall, I expect this to be a transitional year for this team, and I think this team is probably not going to do relatively well as a result of that. Now, in 12th place, let's say Nashville. So, this is right around the same place that they finished last season. The thing that, makes me feel about Nashville, that could be a difference, simply it has to be the attack has to be better, and even Hani Mukhtar need to really show up. I think if Hani Mukhtar the showed up on this team, there's no doubt this team is gonna be good. Now, I know they did add some pieces on this team as well in the offseason, bring Gaston Brugman. I think that's a good piece for them as well. And I also think that their roster isn't as bad and as cap hell as I thought originally that they were going to do because they were still able to be very flexible in terms of making some signing. But ultimately, I think Hani Mukhtar will really determine this team. I mean, he needs to get himself back to that MVP season that he had a couple of years ago if Nashville want to get themselves above the red line. I also do have question when it comes to the defense as well. Last season, the defense was not very good, but partially because they did lose some key pieces on the defense. Walker Zimmerman at times were not available on the team, whether for international duty or injury for sake. And then lastly, I do have a question in terms of BJ Callahan's system. Again, it's gonna take a while before BJ Callahan can really implement his system and basically have this roster to buy into this system that he runs because for the most part this team, even with the changes that they made, it's still a very Gary Smith kind of team, and they still are so implemented in the Gary Smith system that we saw last season when BJ Cowan tried to change it did not go well so whatsoever. I mean, it actually went pretty bad when they were trying to play more of a possession game, and it got so bad that they actually reverted back to the Gary Smith system. They actually didn't have as much possession near the end of the season, and that's where they kind of were a little bit big successful as a result. Though I don't think that's the way that BJ Callahan wants to play, and that's kind of not the reason why Nashville hired him. They want this team to be more of a possession team, and we'll see whether or not if it will work out, and it might even take a while for it to do so. Then we go to 11th. I'm gonna say CF Montreal. So this is kind of right around the places where Montreal usually finish in the season. For the last couple of years, besides that one year when Wilfred Nancy was able to guide that team to finish second in the standings, this team has always been around this spot where it's right around this time of the period they're going to finish either in 11th, 10th, night and stuff like that, no matter the quality the team is. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same case again. I don't think that when I look at this Montreal team, even though they signed a lot of domestic talent and made a lot of in interleague trade throughout, I don't know if it's still going to be good enough to compete in the East, and especially the talent that's been given to Laurent Courtois. Don't know if it's enough for him to still run the Wilfred Nancy system that he really wants this team to run, and is the whole reason why Montreal bought him in the first place. So as a result, I'm gonna say they're gonna be finishing right where you usually see them finish, which is right around the bubble area. And I won't be surprised this might be once again another season where Montreal will be battling for playoff position, at least the last couple of playoff position, and maybe be a French playoff team. As it has kind of been the case, besides that one year when they finished second under Wilfred Nancy. Then in 10th place, the team that just missed out of the playoffs. This is the New England Revolution. Again, it's a little bit of a long name, so it's going to take me a while to write the whole name down. But yeah, I'm going to say New England's going to finish 10th. I think this year is going to be better under Caleb Porter. I mean, it has to be. Like, if it doesn't get well, I have no doubt Caleb Porter is gone with this team. It's almost a miracle the fact that he survived the job last season, especially in June. I thought there was a chance that he was going to be fired because I heard heard that he actually missed a meeting, and if they had that meeting, Caleb Porter would have probably sent packing during that stage. But there's no doubt that this New England team they changed a lot. Like they almost did a house cleaning throughout this off season. They brought in a lot new pieces on this team as well, and with that being said, it will be interesting to see whether or not if things will go well. I mean, anytime when you decided to clean house and pretty much drop a nuke in your team and build a team from scratch. First, I can understand why some people say that San Diego FC is not the only expansion team in MLS heading this season. You could say New England might be that expansion team because they brought in so many pieces, and you could even say that this is a Caleb Porter team now. I expect it should be better. And if it's not better, you can say Caleb Porter probably is going to get the axe in the middle of the season, and maybe near the end of the season they'll find some hope with a new head coach and things would go well. But by then it probably might be too late to make a playoff push. And then the other thing that New England also is hoping to not have a repeat as what we've seen in the last couple of seasons, injury issue. I mean, injuries has been a huge problem for this team. They have been one of the more injury riddle team in the last couple of years. And again, this might go back to whatever Bruce Arena did to the team. He might have just cursed this team because of that what scandal that we still don't know the whole story about that happened a couple of years ago. But there's no doubt I think this New England team is going to be better, and especially the other thing is talk about those injuries that players that suffer last year. Some of them is going to return this year, and that should really boost this Revs team to be a fringe playoff team heading into the season. Now, finish in ninth place. Yes, I am going to put the Chicago Fire above the red line, and I am really praying that this is finally the year. This has to be the year that the Chicago Fire make it to the playoffs. I mean, I think the last two seasons I have put them pretty close to being in the playoff line. I put them in the playoffs last season as well, and once again they disappoint me. And I'm not a Chicago Fire fan, but just as an MLS uh, neutral and a guy that likes to watch this league for the past couple of years, I am begging that the Chicago Fire can finally get their acts together, and I am kind of almost rooting for them this year to actually do well under Greg Berhalter because again just like New England they made a lot of changes in terms of their team. They brought in some really good player as well. One example was bringing Jonathan Bamba. I really like that signing, and I think he's going to do really well with this Fire team. But just in general, Greg Berhalter, say what you say about what he did with the U.S. men's national team and all the negative kind of style of play that U.S. fans were very upset about Greg Berhalter is the reason why they want him out for a very long time. He's still a really good head coach in MLS, and we've seen before where coaches in the international level might not do well, but in the club level they actually turns out to do well. I mean, look at what we saw with Bruce Arena. He did badly with the national team during his second stint, but then when he joined the New England Revolution, he single handedly turned that team around and won that team a supporter shield. Now, I'm not saying that could be the case for the Chicago Fire. I don't think it's going to happen over time. And just like New England, because you made so many changes, it's going to take a time or a bit for Greg Berhalter to really implement his system and get the buy-in. But by then, I really hope it's going to be enough for this team make it to the playoffs. I am praying that they don't get stuck in that usual cycle that the Chicago Fire has been stuck on for really for now a decade and a half now, where they always get all to a slow start, then they kind of give their fans false hope in the middle of the season, become relatively hot, but by the time when September comes, the usual collapse happened. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. I expect the slow start could happen again because of the new head coach and the signing to be integrated with the team. But for God's sake, let's just hope that September collapse doesn't happen. Let's just hope that what they did in the summer with them doing relatively well and figuring it out under Greg Berhalter will be enough to push themselves above the playoffs and finally end the longest active playoff drought that any MLS team has ever had right now. Now, in number 8, I'm going to say the New York Red Bulls. So you might be thinking, how am I putting the Red Bulls this low in the standings, and even worse than they are last season, considering they made the MLS Cup last year as well. Well, here's the thing. Remember, they made MLS Cup last year. That was great. But they finished 7th in the league. And let's not also forget that, I would say that if it wasn't for all those Eastern Conference team and those favorites to just just completely self-destruct in the first round. I don't know if the Red Bulls would have got too deep into the tournament. Certainly, if they face the likes of Inter Miami or even FC Cincinnati, I don't know if they can go too deep into the tournament. But overall, when you look at this Bull side, I mean, I don't know. They gone better this season. I mean, they lose a couple of key pieces as well. The most important piece that they lost is John Token, who they sold him off to Germany as well. Yes, they got Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting, but keep in mind he is a guy that is approaching his mid 30s, and the fact that they made him a DP player, I mean, I don't think that was a great deal to make him a designated player. Consider, you never want to sign a guy that, Trupa Moting has kind of become a bit of a late bloomer. He actually has done relatively well as he aged, but he's also have injury issue. And speaking of injuries, that is what I am concerned about the front three of this team. This front three with Morgan, Frostberg, and Trupa Moting. I said in the season preview, I would be surprised if they can play more than 25 games altogether because all these guys have had their injury issue before, and when you don't have those guys, I mean, they again lose some depth pieces as well. No longer Elias Manuel is there, and they also just sold Dante Benzer as well. Basically, they need some more depth and also a DP number 9. And there's been rumor of them potentially getting Timo Werner for a while. But until then, again, I do think that this team once again is going to be like what we usually see with the Red Bulls. They're probably going to make it to the playoffs because I don't think that streak of there is going to end this year. I think they're probably good enough under Santos Schwartz that the streak will continue for another year, the longest active playoff streak out of any team. But it's probably going to be like last season where they're probably going to finish on the fringe of being a playoff team, and that's so Metro moment seems like could continue because remember what happened in 2008 when they win the MLS Cup? Yeah, the very next year they did not make it to the playoffs, and while I don't think it's going to happen again this year, after 2009, that's when the That's So Metro moment kind of continued, even when they had some really good players on that team. I mean, it's hard to believe they had guys like Terry Henry and Tim Cahill and even Bradley Wright Phillips, and none of those teams. And at once they had them all together. They didn't really go too far in those playoffs too, because again, there's a reason why That's So Metro narrative always surround this team, and it's a saying that the legacy of failure of this team is pretty much from day one for this Red Bull side. Then we go to number 7, and this might be a little bit of a surprise that I put Orlando City this low in the standings, and I know Orlando City fans are going to be hating me by putting them so low in the standings, but the reason why I put them relatively low in the standings is one, I do think that last year they missed a golden opportunity to reach MLS Cup and even maybe lifting their first MLS Cup as well. Although, them facing against that Galaxy Buzzsaw team, that was going to be always going to be a tall order to ask. But they were the favorites to reach all the way to MLS Cup because pretty much all the favorites in the Eastern Conference were all knocked out. They were the last team that you could really say they were the odds-on favorite really be the team to represent the East in MLS Cup. But the other issue with this Orlando City side is that they lose some really key pieces this off season. I mean, losing Facundo Torres, that is not going to be easy whatsoever. Consider he scored a lot of goals for this team, and you lose a player like that. Yes, they have tried to maybe find some replacement for him, but time will tell whether or not if that of course would turn out. And let's also not forget that there's no guarantee that some of either their star player is still going to be sticking around for a while. For a while, there's been no rumor that says our rule might be the next one to go. And then let's also not forget about Duncan McGuire as well. There's always going to be interest of him going to Europe after that failed Blackburn Rovers move. And when you have those kind of uncertainty for this Orlando City side, and especially if they get off to a slow start again, I mean, they've been very fortunate, the fact that they figured it out as the season goes along, but I'm pretty sure Orlando City fans does not want to see this team get off to a slow start. And if they do get off to a slow start again for the third year in a row, I don't know if they have enough to come back from this, unless if they go crazy in the summer transfer window to ratify that. Then we go to number 6. I'm going to say NYCFC. So for NYCFC, I put them here mainly because, with I originally actually put NYCFC a little high in the standings, but then when I heard that they were going to sell Santiago Rodriguez to Botafogo, and I even mentioned in yesterday News of the Week episode how even though NYCFC is going to lose a key player like that, the amount that NYCFC is going to get for Santi Rodriguez, that is just too much for them to turn down. With that being said, though, they are still losing a key player like him, and we saw what happened when they didn't have had him a couple of years ago. They missed out on the playoffs, and it was a disastrous kind of season, especially in the beginning. Now, I would say that this team, even with Santi Rodriguez, it might be still more prepared. Consider again, I do hope that maybe the youngster that we saw last season that showed some inconsistency factor, or they might take a step up this season and do relatively well, which is kind of the reason why I put them relatively high in the standings in the first place. But again, the Santi Rodriguez so that's going to really hurt this team chances to go pretty high in the standings. But I also do trust that Pascal Janssen, he has a background of able to do well in with teams in the Europa League. I trust that he's the right man to lead this team, and especially City Football Group have always, for the most part, done a good job when it comes to selecting the right head coach and also getting the right signing as well. I think this team probably could improve it as the season goes along, but as of now, I'm gonna put them in sixth place. They could definitely go higher, but they could also go lower in the standings. Now, moving on into fifth, I'm gonna say Charlotte. So this is the spot that Charlotte finished last season, and I'm gonna put them right at the same spot as well. So there's no doubt that for Charlotte, their strength for this team is always going to be defense, and I am always that believer that defense wins championship, and defense always will win you game, no matter how the attack could be a big question. And heading into this season, yes, they add Wilfred Zaha to their attack. I don't know if that's going to make a difference, considering they're really hoping Wilfred Zaha is going to be like the Wilfred Zaha that we saw during his time with Crystal Palace. If they can get that, then they got a good player on this team. But other than that, there's still a lot of question when it comes to this attack. Is Leo Bada the and Pepio is going to take that next step to really carry the team? Is Patrick Ajiman going to continue the good form that he had with the U.S. men's national team and carry into the Charlotte team? Basically, what I'm saying with the Charlotte team is that if they can figure out the attack, this team can definitely finish higher than where I think in the standings, because we know the defense is there. Their defense is rock solid, and they didn't really move on from anybody else at that back line. Pretty much that back line is still the same, and the same goes for their goalkeeper Christian Kalin, winning goalkeeper of the year. I expect he's gonna have a good season again. So yeah, once again, I think the Charlotte team is gonna be decent, and once again, I think this is another team that I'm gonna say, if there is a dark horse in the Eastern Conference and a team that you kind of don't want to play when you face them in the playoffs, I think it's got to be the Charlotte team heading into this season. Now, putting number four, I'm gonna say Columbus. And again, I've also seen like other people's prediction video, and I've seen some people put Columbus relatively low in the standings. And yes, I understand that they lost a huge piece in their team in Cucho Hernandez, and that is going to be tough for this team to try to overcome. And not to mention, they also lost some depth in that spot in Christian Ramirez as well. But as I said earlier in the video, when I talk about this team in terms of their hope to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the reason why I don't think Columbus is gonna suffer that much of a drop off as some people might think they should be. It's simply Wilfred Nancy. I mean, as long as Wilfred Nancy is in this team, it really doesn't matter what kind of players that this team has, and we know this team has some good depth and also produce some good players out of their MLS Next Pro as well. But as long as you have Wilfred Nancy, this team is going to be a team to watch in the Eastern Conference. I mean, just look at what he did last season with even some of the depth pieces like Max Arpston and Jason Russell Rowe, who I think those are going to be the pieces that they'll probably temporarily use to be the goal scorer of this team. And they're also going to be really heavily relying on Diego Rossi as well. He's probably going to have to be that star man now to step up on this team. But if they eventually does find their number nine and find the right replacement, this team is going to be once again a contender again. And that, as I said, I don't think this team is going to suffer as big of a drop off as people has, and that I really think what Wilfred Nancy has done to this team over the year. There's a reason why a lot of team in Europe is looking to get Wilfred Nancy, and I also think that for Columbus, they know that their window is not going to be be super long if Wilfred Nancy does leave. If Wilfred Nancy does leave this team, that's when I really think they could suffer a major setback because of the philosophy that he brought to this team. But until they still have him and they still at least get most of their depth pieces, this team should be at the bare minimum a top four team heading into this season. Now, in third place, it's going to be FC Cincinnati. So the other Ohio team, I put them in third place. And again, the top four, I think you kind of knew which team they are. Well, in the case of the second place team, I mean that might be kind of came out of nowhere, but I don't think it's a big surprise compared to what they done in the offseason. But you kind of knew that I was gonna put the two Ohio team and especially Inter Miami around the top four area. And this is despite the fact that I know people have said that, well, those two Ohio team lost some key talent as well. I mean, Columbus losing Cucho Hernandez, Cincinnati losing Lucho Acosta. They should suffer a bit of a setback, right? Well, not really. I mean, Cincinnati did get the replacement of Lucho Acosta, and they got Evander as the replacement. I mean, that's not a bad like for like replacement when you replace a guy that won the MVP two years ago, or yeah, is it 2 years ago? I mean, we can say 2 years ago since it was the 2023 season, and basically replace a guy like Evander that if it wasn't for some turmoil that he suffered in the latter part of the season with the Timbers, he was going to be an MVP candidate for that team as well. And overall, the other thing is that they might have finally solved their issue in the number 9 position by signing Kevin Dinky. They're really hoping he's going to be the guy that really drive the goal scoring. And then not to mention, the back line of this team, as long as they don't suffer that injury crisis that they had last season, this team should be a good team under Pat Nolan. And that again, their demise that I hear with just like Columbus, with Cincinnati, I think it's a greatly exaggerated. I still think this is going to be a really good team and a team that once again is looking to trying to get themselves to the ultimate goal, and that of course it is getting to the MLS Cup. Now at number two, it's going to be Atlanta United. So last year I put Atlanta in first place, and last year the reason why I put them relatively high was because I knew that they had some really top and talented player. Now, obviously, those top and talented player like Yakimakis and Amada not only didn't quite work out for them, but yeah, they got sold in the summer, and in the summer they basically had a big roster turnover and going for a bit of a transitional period. I'm hoping that's not going to be the same case heading into this season, and it shouldn't be because when you look at this season, the difference between last season is while they already had those key players play for a previous season, some of the pieces that they have right now, they just recently brought this off season. I mean, getting Emmanuel Latte Laugh, he's going to be a golden boot candidate. You got to think because you don't pay someone $22 million and not be in that conversation. And then I think the most important piece that they bought it in. I mean, everybody talk about Latte Laugh as the most important piece. I really think the most important piece they bought is Miguel Almiron back to this team. And I know Miguel Almiron doing his time with Newcastle, especially the last couple of seasons, he hasn't really been the same player. But I do believe that now he's returning back to the plays that kind of form himself a legacy and really kind of is the first big name that really kind of transformed this league to be a selling league and this MLS 3.0 kind of mindset that Atlanta started back in 2018. I think he's going to do his magic once again. I think between him and Lati Laugh, I can definitely sense that we're going to see the Joseph Martinez and Almiron kind of connection that we saw with the old Atlanta team. And then besides that, I mean, they also have some really good talented player in the depth chart as well. Don't forget Seba Lobjanidze. He's still with this team. He really carried that team at times last season. That is there as well. And even some of their summer signing, some of their unexpected summer signing, like Pedro Amador, he had a great surprising second half of the season when he came into the team. I expect he's going to be good as well. And when you add all that layer to that, this should be a team that I think could be a contender once again. And again, that is if they don't have a crazy roster their turnover and that all these signings basically blow up in their face, which happened before with Atlanta. But I do trust that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. I think Ronnie Daly is considered to be an upgrade compared to Gonzalo Pineda. Especially, we've seen Ronnie Daly out doing his short time with NYCFC. He has shown that in a pressure situation he can deliver. I think that's going to be the same case with Atlanta United, and I do believe that just because I predicted them to finish first last year and blow up my face, I'm a little bit more confident that it's not going to blow up in my face this time picking them this high in the standings, just like last year. And then finally, at number one, I think we all know who's going to be number one. I can't believe I predicted them to finish 10th last season. And I can't believe that I was a doubter of this team, mainly because I doubted the fact that yes, the greatest player of all time is being there, but his friends on this team, is he going to make a big impact to the team? Well, not only the fact that that team made a big impact last season, but yeah, they also had just incredible youth talent and incredible supporter cast who really carried them with the best points total in MLS regular season. So look at what happened in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure Miami fans will say that was just a crapshoot and nothing happened in the playoffs. But in all seriousness, I mean, even though I know there's a lot of question in terms of Javier Mascherano, and is he gonna be the guy that not a lot of experience in the senior level coaching, but is he considered to be an upgrade to Tata Martino? I mean, many people say it's a downgrade. Consider he kind of butchered the talent with the Olympic team with Argentina. But I do think that this team, as long as Messi stay healthy and as long as they continue to have good supporting cast, which they do. I mean, this team, as much as we always focus on the Barcelona boys, this team has some really good depth as well, and that's even when they sell Diego Gomez to Brighton. I still think there are some really good pieces out there and good supporting cast to get this team, even if they decided to rest some of their key player as well, because I know Messi's probably not going to play every single game, and the same goes for the other Barcelona guys like Luis Suarez and Busquets and Alba. I don't think they're going to play every single game because of the amount of competition that they are involved. But because of the depth and the supporting cast, and also them really addressing the issue with the defense. I mean, the defense was the biggest kryptonite of that team last season. Now that they have some reinforcement, and if that reinforcement actually turns out to be well, I mean, I don't even expect that reinforcement to turn out well. If it's just good enough to not concede so many goals like they did last season, this team is now on winning the supporter show again, isn't it? This year, and this team is gonna now on to probably finish first again in the East, and the team that right now is probably the odds-on favorite to win MLS Cup right now before the season begin. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. My prediction for the Eastern Conference, and again, I'm pretty sure this won't blow up in my face in the end of the season. I can't wait to see how many teams I predicted here to finish in outside of the playoffs made it into the playoffs, and how many team I predicted made it into the playoffs in the beginning of the season end up missing out on the playoffs. And there's one thing that you notice when it comes to my prediction video. I picked a lot of teams that made it to the playoffs last season in the East, and I picked them to stay in, whereas teams that missed out on the playoffs, I put a lot of them still missing out of the playoffs. I mean, the only team that I think I picked last season that didn't that didn't make it to the playoffs. That didn't make it to the playoffs. I think the Chicago Fire is the only team that I predicted that. And again, I know there's always going to be surprises in the Eastern Conference, and really just the league itself. There's going to be maybe some of these teams that could surprise everybody and actually do relatively well. But in general, this is kind of what I think it could happen based on when I look at the analytics and the quality that this team has had. But let me know in the comments below. What do you think of this prediction? And as always, let me know in the comments below. Did I maybe put some team a little bit too high, or did I put some team that probably are on this side that probably should belong above the red line? As always, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.